Welcome to another Best Wildcard Team video ahead of Game Week 5 this time, and this will be a triple upload because of such a short turnaround. So drop a like to show your support, and let's try to get this to over 200 likes, and we're very close to 13,000 subscribers, so let's keep on pushing. I really appreciate all your support, and let's just jump straight into it. Just like in the last Best Wildcard Team video, I've gone for Sanchez and Ward as the two goalkeepers. I'm still a bit concerned about Ward being the #1 goalkeeper for Leicester in the long term because Iverson was very impressive last week in the Carabao Cup. I was surprised that he didn't start against Chelsea, but let's keep on seeing what happens. In terms of Sanchez, I think he's the best goalkeeper in the game right now. He offers great value. There is Dean Henderson at a similar price. He is great at saving penalties. He saved 3 of the last 5 in the Premier League and 7 of his previous 11, which is very impressive stuff, and also 10 of his last 19. So as you can see, he is a great penalty saver, but I prefer Bruyne and Sanchez over Nottingham Forest and Dean Henderson because of the clean sheets, and ultimately saves and bonus points I think will be quite similar, but we'll see how things evolve later in the season. You've also got Ramsdale and Nick Pope around 5 million and Edison at 5.5, but I think Sanchez is the clear victor. Raya is another good alternative at 4.5 million with great fixtures, but I don't trust Brentford defensively, so Sanchez has to be the goalkeeper on a wildcard. This backline is also identical to the last two Best Wildcard Team videos. Most of the changes will be in the midfield and the forward line, but James, Trent and Cancelo have featured in every single one of these drafts, and I still think they are 3 of the best options in the game. Chelsea aren't great defensively, and I think they're in the bottom 5 for expected goals conceded, with 7 in 4 matches, which is absolutely ridiculous. And we talked about Mendy and Chelsea's defensive stats in more detail in the transfer tips video that I uploaded earlier today. And Trent and Cancelo, I still have a lot of faith in them to get a lot of clean sheets and of course attacking returns. And Cancelo is one of the most transferred out players this week, and most people point towards the fact that he's not really got great underlying numbers this season and they don't see too many attacking returns. I disagree. I know the stats aren't that great, and if this continues then of course it's something worth considering, and possibly we could offload him in the future. But the fixtures are great. I still think Cancelo can get some huge returns, as he did in Game Week 2 against Bournemouth. He got an 11-pointer with that fantasy assist, and I think this is a very solid backline overall. But for those of you that want to change your structure completely, you could maybe downgrade one of these defenders and try to go away from big at the back. We only have 4 premiums in essence, if you count Perisic as one, and Saliba is a bit of an awkward price at the moment at 4.7 million. So you could go to Nico Williams. Whether you downgrade Perisic or Saliba, it's up to you. Perisic will probably get the second most or third most attacking returns from the defenders you see on screen, and possibly in the entire game. He's looking very impressive. Probably should have got the assist if Harry Kane had tucked away that penalty against Forest. He's looking incredible, but the minutes will always be a concern with the Croatian. And Reece James, Chelsea are struggling, like I said, but still, he remains to be a great FPL option with those assists and goals. He's got the most goal contributions of any defender since last season. And Saliba, I have to say, is my favourite, but if you don't have enough money, then you could go to a 4.5 million defender instead, or as I said, Nico Williams. I think all of that would be great. It just depends on what you're looking for in terms of your team structure and what your funds allow. We have several big changes from the last few videos. So Diaz, Gross and De Bruyne are all new. Andreas and Martinelli are the only ones that remain. And this is an interesting one because we have so many midfielders at our disposal. If Zaha's back, he's got a great fixture against Brentford, and I think he's a fantastic option in general. You know, he's got the 3rd most goals of any player in the Premier League in 2022, and he is a big part of that Crystal Palace attack. He's the only Crystal Palace offensive player that I would consider. Gross is in great form. I've got him in my own team now, if you check out my team selection video, and I think Brighton are looking fantastic. An alternative to him is Trossard in the same team, who's probably going to be more consistent over the course of the season, but he is also more expensive. And Rodrigo is still a fantastic option for me. His underlying numbers are fantastic, and I think he will continue his form, although let's wait and see, because last season in the first 3 game weeks, Benrahma and Antonio were incredible, and then they slowly but surely dropped off, and it was Bowen who later ascended as the best West Ham asset. So let's see what happens with Leeds United. And De Bruyne over Salah is an interesting one. I would go for one of those two, and I keep on talking about this with Salah. I still think he's worth holding, and even on a wild card you could go for him. He will feature in the second team, just to give you a bit of a conundrum. That will be the more expensive team. This squad overall will cost 100.2 million, so it's very accessible for most of you, even those that haven't been paying attention to price rises, such as myself. I can easily afford this, for example, and I don't really look at price changes too much. Speaking of these price changes, Luis Diaz has gone up to 8.1 million, and he is probably the most in-form 8 million midfielder in the game. But I still like Maddison a lot, And if he's fit, you can consider him as well. He's been the most consistent midfielder in the last 7 Premier League matches that he started in, with the most goals and most assists. But Diaz has started the season very well, and he got 14 points in Game Week 4. And I still would be a bit concerned about his goal contributions in the long term, but he's a great way of maybe covering for Salah and Liverpool's attack if you decide to go for De Bruyne or a midfield structure that is akin to this. Martinelli is still my preference over Rodrigo, but there's also a bit of a difference in price. Those of you that started the season with Martinelli, it's just better if you stay with him, in my opinion. Arsenal are a better team than Leeds. They'll score more goals, and I still think Martinelli will do a good job. But there's only, I think, a 0.1 million difference in price now. Rodrigo 6.5 million and Martinelli is 6.4. Andreas is my 4.5 million midfielder of choice, but he's just going to sit on the bench most of the time. And this team arguably has a lot of squad depth, and maybe you could say the same about the second team, but I always like having one good option on the bench if possible, just in case there's some really bad fixtures or an injury happens, maybe rotation. A lot of us are talking about rotation for some of the best options in the game, such as Erling Haaland, but I have to say I really like this midfield structure, and it covers 4 of the best midfielders in the game right now. But of course, there's always going to be different options popping about, and this might look very different later on in the season when we talk about the best wildcard team. A lot of people expect Haaland to be benched in Game Week 5, and I can understand that completely, but I still would go for him on a wildcard. It's between him and Kane. Take your pick. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. The way I see it is that Haaland has a higher ceiling whenever he does start, but Harry Kane is just a bit more secure in terms of those expected minutes and those starts, and that's why you might go for the striker that's chasing all the records right now in the Premier League. Ivan Toney's in here, and I think the big kind of omission would be Gabriel Jesus, who is featured in every single one of these videos. I don't suddenly think he's a bad option just because of a few blanks and maybe underwhelming performances, but I still would be concerned in the long term about him scoring week in, week out. Jesus isn't a great finisher. He's done very well at Arsenal. I think he's a great signing overall, but you could save a bit of money there by going for Ivan Toney, if you decide not to go for free forwards, by the way, and you maybe don't want to go triple Arsenal, especially double Arsenal attack, which is still a good thing, by the way. Arsenal are one of the most informed teams in the league. They're top of the table, but they do have some tough fixtures coming up, including United, who I believe Gabriel Jesus has never scored against. But look, there's no right or wrong. Jesus, Haaland, Kane, Toney, Mitrovic, I think they're the 5 best forwards in the game right now. And if you pick 3 or 2 of any of those 5, I think you're completely fine and you're in a good position overall. Stansfield is the best 4.5 million forward at the moment. He didn't start against Arsenal, but he did in Game Week 3 and he got an assist. And you don't really have much to choose from anyway. He will be third on your bench pretty much all the time. Andreas Pereira second. Maybe sometimes he can start for you. You'll be first on your bench. It's completely up to you. But you do have the squad depth here. You can rotate between one of your defenders or maybe one of your midfielders, and you know the likes of Sanchez will start every week. You can go for James, Trent and Cancelo. Then it's between Perisic and Saliba depending on rotation and what you think is going to happen. You can then start Diaz, Martinelli, De Bruyne every single week, and then Grosh can sometimes alternate with one of those defenders, and then Tony Haaland starts every single week. So this team speaks for itself. It's very cheap, affordable, and I think it's a great squad overall, with key differences between the last 2 wildcard squads that I've shown you. If you were to go for this team, I would start Robert Sanchez in goal. I would go for James, Trent, Cancelo, and then one of Perisic or Saliba. That will be the big question. In terms of clean sheet prospects, I think Arsenal are more likely this week against Aston Villa compared to Spurs in the London derby versus West Ham. But Perisic always has those attack and returns, so it's completely up to you there. I think Perisic will start that game, but perhaps be benched against Fulham in Game Week 6. And in terms of the midfielders, I go for Martinelli, Diaz, Gross, and De Bruyne. So a 4-4-2, and Toney and Haaland would be the starting strikers. And I would go for either De Bruyne or Erling Haaland as your captain, and De Bruyne is a bit safer in terms of expected minutes, and I think I would go for him, but it's very close between those two. If Haaland starts, and to be fair, there is a chance, because is he going to play 3 games in a week against Aston Villa, Sevilla, and also the following week in Game Week 7? I'm not too sure, but I think it's a good conundrum to have, and you can't go wrong with either one of them unless Haaland is benched. This second team structure involves 3 forwards, so you might prefer this one, and it also has a bit less squad depth, so you have fewer rotation headaches or team selection headaches. Sanchez and Ward, same goalkeepers. We've got Perisic, James, Trent and Cancelo who remain, but instead of Saliba, I've gone for Nico Williams here, and it could be Patterson, and we've also got Martinelli, Rodrigo, Grosh and Salah, and this team overall costs 101 million. So there's a 0.8 million difference in price between both squads. This is the more expensive one. Andreas also remains, but we've gone for Mitrovic over his fellow partner at Fulham Stansfield. Tony and Haaland are also in here. But maybe what you could do is go for De Bruyne instead of Salah, especially if you can't afford this. You can find some alternative solutions. You can go for Fofana instead of Nico Williams if you really want a Chelsea double up in defence, which to be honest I don't, despite having Cucurella and Reece James. You can go for the Spaniard over James as well if you wish. Saliba instead of Perisic, Robertson instead of Trent, although I probably wouldn't do that to be fair. And those of you that really don't trust Cancelo, you could go for Diaz instead of Joao Cancelo, but I probably wouldn't, to be quite frank. And then you've got Grosh. You know, he's a really good option right now, but you've still got Harrison. You've got a few others like Wilfred Zaha, Ilkay Gundogan. We've got plenty of choices, but it's good to narrow them down. And I've discussed most of the kind of best players in each position in all of these recent videos. So you kind of have a good idea of what I think are the best options in every single position. And you may disagree, but that's what I'm thinking at the moment based on what we've seen so far this season and the underlying numbers. This team is more expensive. I can't even afford it myself. I'm 0.3 million short, but it's a very good squad for those of you with the team value. Let me know which squad you prefer, and of course, if you can't afford it, let me know which kind of sacrifices you would make in order to be able to do so. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. If you enjoyed this, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's get this video to over 200 likes, and we're very close to 13,000 subscribers, so let's keep on pushing. I hope to see you on the deadline stream tomorrow, as well as the UCL fantasy content, including the deadline streams the following Tuesday. And for those of you that might be wondering, you know, which players would you captain this week? Well, if you back Haaland to start, I think he is the clear favourite here. Unless you go for the first team with Kevin De Bruyne, he's going to be a bit safer in terms of expected minutes, so he could be your pick over the Norwegian. But to be honest, it's probably a Man City player this week. It's just Pep Roulette could strike us all, and that's the way it would go. With the second team that you saw on screen, you could go for Sanchez in goal to start this week, Perisic, James, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Cancelo, then go for Martinelli, Rodrigo, Grosh and Salah, and then up front you can go for Tony and Erling Haaland. But to be fair, would you want to bench Mitrovic? Probably not, and in that case, Perisic is probably the one I would highlight as the one to drop to the bench, because I really like Mitrovic and Grosh, despite the fact that they are facing each other, and that could be a tough game overall. But that just about covers everything that we need to with these two wildcard squads. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, for all the latest FPL, UCL Fantasy and F1 Fantasy updates. And also be sure to check the links in the description below to join the FPL League, the Discord server, as well as becoming a patron or a channel member. So thank you very much to everyone as always, and I hope to see you in the next few streams and keep on interacting with you. And I'll see you next time.